Visit thehonestcarpenter.com and get your home-related questions answered by a trade expert. Hi there, I'm Ethan with thehonestcarpenter.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how to repair some exterior trim, specifically the skirt board beneath the siding and a little bit of the corner board next to it. What I'm going to do in this repair is fix this damage that we got right down in the lower corner behind this downspout here. There was a little bit of rot, and then I think a dog or an animal got at it and clawed at all this material and tore a lot of it loose. So I'm actually going to cut back some of the skirt board, maybe 4 feet away. I'm not going to replace the full 16-foot run, which goes all the way down there. Instead, I'm going to truncate it, and I'm going to replace it with a little custom piece that comes right up to the corner board. And for the corner board itself, I'm going to do something similar and cut a control line right here and replace the bottom foot with treated wood that has been dried out. And then I'll be able to paint it up and with matching paint and matching exterior paint, and it should all blend in pretty seamlessly. Some people would much rather replace the whole corner board, but that would involve a lot more repainting and caulk work here, and the client opted for the smaller repair. I use a couple tricks that really make these notches blend in, so I'll show those in this video. I'm going to narrate this segment of the video because it's just a little easier to do that way. So to begin the repair, I use a speed square and a pencil to mark a perpendicular line on the face of the trim that I'm replacing. I then switch over to an Oscillating Multi-tool with a wood blade in it to make the cut through that line. I start by just carefully etching the line with the blade, and then I begin to sweep the blade up and down. That clears dust out of the cut, and I can begin to move the saw deeper into the material that I'm cutting there. When you punch all the way through the back, it can be good to check your line again with the square just to make sure that you kept a perpendicular cut going. After that, I switch over to a utility knife and I cut any caulk lines that are between the piece I'm replacing and the pieces around it. In this case, it's the underside of the drip edge. When that's done, I repeat the same process for the corner board, the lower portion of it. Again, sweeping the blade side to side after I make a score line and clearing dust out of the cut. Then, when I have both my cuts made, I can begin to pry them out. I'm using a 5-in-1 here, which is a painter's tool, and I'm just very gently pulling the board lightly away from the wall. And I'm listening for any stress in the lumber or the pieces around it. I don't want to pop something else off on accident. When that's partially pulled out, I go ahead and tackle the corner board a little bit too. You can see how deteriorated it is. So I actually switch over to the other side. There I'm able to get fully behind the piece and pry it out in one big chunk. That's always ideal, but again, I do this really gently so that I don't mess up siding, drip edge, gutter, or anything else. When the corner piece is off, I switch back over to the skirt board and begin to pry it off with a claw hammer. Again, I'm just doing this really gently, and when I get it pulled out just a little bit, sometimes you can hit the board with your hammer and it'll pop out nails that are partially pried, and you can pull them with the claw. And here you see the thing came pretty much free, and you have all these brads sticking out the back. I go ahead and bend those down. I don't want to step on them. I don't want anybody else stepping on them or catching their hand on them. So I either pull them out or bend them down before I even toss this thing aside. Then I pull the nails in any of the trim that's still on the wall. I just do that with the nail puller because these nails will prevent your new piece from sitting flush. So I just take a few of them out where they stayed inside that trim. After that, I take a precaution against further rot by sealing the end grain that I exposed when I made the plunge cut. In this case, I'm using a siliconized latex acrylic caulk to just basically fill up that end grain. And should any water try to get in there again, this will protect the end grain from sucking it up. I also do it on the underside of the corner board where I made the cut. Just rub it in with my finger. This goes a long way to helping prevent any future rot, and I touch up other places that look like they absorbed a little moisture but didn't quite give over to rot. When that's done, I pull a measurement from my replacement piece. In this case, I just hook onto the end of the drip cap and draw the tape out, and I sight down the blade, and I pulled something here like 53 7/8 for the measurement, which I then transfer over to my new pine trim replacement board, and I make the mark with a little V, what we call a crow's foot, and I want to cut at the point of that V. It's how you get a more precise cut. When the piece is ready, I flip it over and I take another water protection step here that's called back priming. You can see I've marked the back side of the board, and what I do is I actually use a paint plus primer to paint the back side of the board. And this way, when I mount the board in place, if water ever gets trapped behind it, it's going to have a harder time rotting the board out, because this layer of paint and primer is going to protect that side of the board, kind of like a skin. And it's something that I do with all of my trim replacement pieces. I also do the top and bottom edge, and I especially focus on the end grain, because that's where wood takes in and absorbs the most water because of the cellular structure of wood when it comes out of a tree. When it's back primed, I give it just a minute to dry. Then I take it and test fit it in place. Here I just feel the end with my fingers and make sure it wants to sit flush with the other piece. If it does, I go ahead and shoot it on with a couple galvanized brads. I don't go crazy yet. I'm going to keep feeling the board, make sure it's tied up against everything else. If it is, then I begin to shoot in something kind of like a continuous W pattern, again with 2-inch galvanized brad nails. You don't have to put a ton in. The piece isn't going to want to go anywhere, so I put in maybe between 12 and 15 of them. And then I repeat the measurement process for the corner board. I hook on to the bottom of my skirt board, pull up to the underside of the piece that we cut, sight down the blade, and again get something, you know, like 9 7/8 here. And corner boards are a little bit thicker. They're 1 inch thick, so I tend to use deck board, treated deck board that I've given a little bit of time to dry, and I rip it to the width that I need. It's already the thickness that I want because deck board is 1 inch thick. Put my crow's foot on at my mark, cut it, and this you don't even need to back prime. Since it's treated, it's not going to rot. I just move it into place, test fit it with my eye, and if it looks good, I go ahead and shoot it on as well. And then I can begin to prep for painting both pieces. I caulk all the seams, caulk the underside of the drip cap, and then I fill in the nail heads. Normally it's not this messy, but doing it with one hand can be a little difficult. You just rub it in a little circular pattern, it'll fill them in. And when it has just a little bit of time to dry, get your orbital palm sander with some 180 grit and hit the seams between the two pieces that you want to run together. Also touch up the edge a little bit. You don't want to leave really sharp corners on replacement trim because it won't hold paint as well. So here you can see I'm doing the seam between the two pieces of skirt board, sanding it down flush, and I'm going to hit all the little caulking spots over the nail heads as well. This just to kind of dress the board. It's also going to make it paint better because it's going to give the board what we call a little bit of tooth. It gives it a texture that's really good for paint to hold on to. And then I always use paint plus primer, and I just start coating our two new pieces, and I make sure that my paint strokes also overlap the seams to the old pieces as well, so you're creating a continuous layer of paint across both surfaces. That's the wrap up on the skirt board and corner board trim repair there. I tried the gutter out. I'm going to put that back in just a second, but you can see I got about 2 really good coats of paint on. You can just barely see the faint line where I did our little joint and caulk seam repair there. And as you look down the board, other than the paint line where the new and old paint meet, you really can't tell where I spliced in that new board, which is exactly what I wanted. It's about halfway down that run, but I continued on to touch up a couple other spots. So that came out real well. Just need some time to dry up, and nobody who comes around this side of the house is probably ever going to notice that a repair happened right here, and it's protected against any water penetration that could happen down the line. So I feel like that's a good job. We're now offering live video consultations and phone consultations to homeowners nationwide. To get your most important home related questions answered by a trade expert, just visit thehonestcarpenter.com.